Well, if it's all right, we all will move to agenda item number 8, discussion of comments received from stakeholders. We did get a recent submission from Environmental Stewardship. Doug Box, I noticed that you're with us today. Would you like to comment on that submission?
Yes, good morning. Thank you.
Sorry, Steve Box. I called you Doug, didn't I? I
Yeah,
apologize.
you did. I kind of figured that you were talking about me, though.
Too many boxes, man. Too many boxes.
There's not enough boxes, actually.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's learning to live outside the box that really counts.
Yeah, I hear you.
Well, first, I want to start by taking a 30,000-foot view of where we stand on the matters of most concern to environmental stewardship, and that is protecting our rivers, our streams, and where we have them are springs from the impacts of unfettered groundwater pumping. Over the last several years, as we finished the last round of DFC's review and entered into this third round, we took an important step forward by updating the GMA 12 GAM to better serve the interests of all of us, including making a better tool for evaluating and predicting the impacts of groundwater pumping on surface waters and groundwater interactions. Together, we acknowledged that the GAM was inadequate to the task and took the steps, and I have to say they were expensive and time-consuming steps to make improvements to the GAM, and that has had impacts throughout the first half of our deliberations on this round. So we have now a 2020 GAM, which we all agree is the best tool, the best scientific tool available for understanding and predicting the impacts of groundwater pumping on surface waters. And though it is not a perfect tool, it is the best tool that we have. But it's clear from the last discussions that we have that having the best tool in town does not provide quantitative predictions that the district representatives believe are needed to support an enforceable DFC. We urgently need the field data that links the predictions of the GAM to the on-the-ground reality. As we found ourselves at this point in the last round of DSC reviews, we again find that we are in a situation where we do not have adequate information to move forward with adopting DFCs that balance the desire for development against the requirement to conserve and protect. And this is not only true for surface waters concerned under consideration 4, it's also true for the unanticipated impacts of Vista Ridge pumping on landowners who depend on their exempt domestic and irrigation wells in Burleson and Lee counties. Considerations 6 and 7, impacts on landowners and socioeconomic impacts. All of these matters have one common characteristic. They all lack critical data and analysis to ensure that we are on a sound footing as we go forward in our duty to plan for the balanced development and conservation of these natural resources without harming the rights of other stakeholders and the surface waters under your jurisdiction. In the comments that environmental stewardship is providing today, we are offering a way forward that we believe can give us the time that is needed to address these critical issues. With respect to surface waters, we are proposing that a different approach be taken in developing DFCs to protect surface water resources than what has been our traditional approach. First, as provided in the statutes cited in our proposal, we are requesting that surface water DFCs be developed under section 361071 using the management plan to put together a long-term plan for surface waters. Under this approach, the initial step is to recognize that the new GAM predicts that unreasonable impacts are possible, if not likely, to result if we stay on our current path of protecting previously permitted pumping without getting the field data needed to inform our actions. We are providing you with a guide and regulatory framework for developing the DFCs for the Colorado River alluvium. We're providing you with a guide and the monitoring needed, to the monitoring needed to get the field data to support such a DFC. And we are asking the Lost Pines and Fayette County GCDs work together to develop a joint surface water management plan for the Colorado River, its tributaries, and the alluvial aquifer within their jurisdictions, and to incorporate those into their upcoming revisions to their current management plans and rules. Finally, we are asking that the 2017 DFCs be readopted using the new GAM results from the Run 3 GAM run that was run with the new GAM earlier in this process. So it's our hope that the districts and their boards will take our request seriously and consider taking these steps that we have outlined in order and that have been provided to you in our documents since last October and truly since 2009. And we look forward to working with you towards trying to bring these matters to resolution in a timely way so that we can proceed with the current round of DFCs and get on then with the actions necessary to be successful in our next round. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you, Steve. Does anyone have any questions for Steve?
I'm not going to try to go through all the details of what's in this document today. I think you need to take the time to read it and to understand the implications, and hopefully we can work forward on this matter and come to some resolution that after these some 13 years of discussions on these matters.
Steve, I note that you did email that to each of the GMA 12 representatives, and also it is posted on our website under today's meeting materials for anyone who would like to review that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the submission. Okay, anyone in GMA 12, any of the representatives have any questions for Steve?
Not at this time.
Okay.
No, sir.
All right.
Yeah, this is Steve Box with Environmental Stewardship. Obviously, this is a lot of information, and we appreciate that it's been put together so that we can evaluate it. We had requested to get this a few days before the meeting so that we could be more prepared to discuss the information that's presented here, but did not get that. So we'll have to take our time and evaluate this and make our comments back prior to the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I very much appreciate Brazos Valley's consideration of a 10% variance for DFCs. Appreciate all the work that they did and went through in their deliberations as well. My point here is that if you go and look at S13, which takes their most recent request and still keeps that Carrizo request that we have before you from S10, and you look at S13, there's only one cell there outside of Post Oak Savannah that is above a 10% variance, and that's the Carrizo and Lost Pines, and so it reduces the impact in Lost Pines. You see S7 up there, Lost Pines, Carrizo's 139. If you allow us our pumping file that we're requesting for the Carrizo, it will reduce your impacts to 123. Everyone else falls within that 10% that Brazos Valley is already okay with. And the only thing above 10% is in Post Oak Savannah. And I would just, again, reiterate that this is management that we've had in place for over a decade, much over a decade, actually. But we believe that this tracks out our mission statement of considering conservation important while recognizing that property rights are important. But we also recognize the balance that's required in considering property rights of those who wish to produce, as well as property rights of those who may want to conserve for the future. We're very, very adamant about our belief that when we're required at the GMA level to consider all 9 factors, that we believe our approach does give more consideration to conservation than just putting everything in a pumping file and rolling forward. We respectfully request that you allow us to continue to manage the Carrizo as we've always desired. And I would be glad to answer any questions at this time.
I don't have a question, but a couple of statements. One, and we appreciate everybody's consideration of S12. Again, we forgot something. We apologize for that at this late date. But on the Carrizo file that Post Oak Savannah, the revised file going down to 12,000 from the 18,000. If we do that, it will be the only file, to my knowledge, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, this would be the only file contained in the GAM that would not include actual pumping. Pumping that is going to happen in an annual year. I know of no other, certainly we don't have any pumping files that don't fully include actual pumping, and I'm guessing that's the case with everyone. So correct me if I'm wrong on that. I'm not willing to put a file when this GMA 12 is under scrutiny. We're watched about, and all GMAs are being scrutinized about the whole process. So it is very important, in my estimation, that we continue down the path that all the files that are included in whatever GAM run that we decide on includes the actual pumping or pumping that is certainly anticipated in this 12-month period. And I realize that the file that Vista Ridge, the Carrizo, it hasn't gone 12 months yet, but it's certainly on course to be there, to use their permit. And I believe I've heard them say that they plan on using it. So again, correct me if I'm wrong on that. But no, that's where we stand. We continue to stand. I'm sorry, Gary, go ahead.
No, I said you're correct. I've never disputed that they have made the statement that they intend to pump the full amount. I believe that's correct.
Yeah. Okay, so I continue. I mean, we ran S11. We excluded the revision of the Carrizo revision of that particular file. I think that was the right thing to do. I'm not prepared to reconsider that. Not me. Our board's not prepared to reconsider the decision we made on S11. And as to S12, we simply have added something that we forgot. So putting that out there for your consideration, you can see the negligible effect of what it was. And I appreciated Jim bringing up how we got, why it would be 1 foot like in Fayette County, and there was no effect on Lost Pines. And I think John did a good job of explaining that. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. I do appreciate your input and your thoughts. You use the word never, and I'm respectful of that. I think as we look back, we've also never had any of the groundwater districts dictate to one of the groundwater districts within GMA 12 what their pumping file would be. And that's basically what would be happening here. An adoption of DFCs based on S7 or S11 or S12 would be forcing us into a larger pumping file in the Carrizo than we would like to have. As far as timing, I do have a statement and then a question. And the statement is, we went through the process of improving the model, did a lot of the work, great expense. As soon as we could get that model and then get it improved with the latest information from the Vista Ridge Wellfield, we updated it again and then completed evaluations using it as quickly as possible and brought that information to you in January and then again in February with actual evidence of impacts and evidence of projected impacts of well owners in our district and adjoining areas. And so the timing of it, we got it here as soon as we could. The statement obviously is that I don't think we've ever forced anyone into a pumping file that they weren't comfortable with. We've commented on each other's pumping files, and I know several years ago, Alan, there was discussion. We had some comments about your location of a pumping center or something, and you guys corrected that, and that was great. But we've never tinkered with the amount in your pumping files, because those are individual expressions of management that each groundwater district is supposed to be considering in their own management plan. And so for us, this is an important point. And then the last observation I'd make, as to the point of known pumping, anticipated pumping, and so forth, I guess my question that I'd lead off with before I deliberate is, if the timing works out improperly, it's possible that during a 5-year planning cycle, which we do this every 5 years, if this is going to be our new standard, that, as Alan expressed a while ago, then it's possible that someone could come in, apply for a permit next year, receive it the following year, go into production the year after that, and then you would be forced to increase your pumping and your DFCs again. That's a never-ending cycle. We'll never have a DFC that means anything if we're going to manage that way. It'll just continue to ramp up and ramp up and ramp up, and there will be no balance. And what we're trying to do here is provide a foundation for balance. And we do agree. We are very heavily scrutinized in GMA 12. We agree with you. We understand that just as well as several of you do. We have been heavily scrutinized as an individual district for quite some time, just as you have. We understand that's just the nature of where we are. But these are points that I think deserve a lot of consideration, because once we set this precedent, and I do believe this would be a precedent, because I don't believe we've done this just like this in the past. It'll be hard to undo. There's been discussion about, hey, we're going to do another round in 5 years. It'll be really hard to undo that. And I just don't think we ought to be setting that precedent of some, 4 of us telling one of you what you have to have in your pumping file and how you have to manage the aquifer in your district. Thank you for your consideration.
Gary, Alan, I'd like to make a couple more comments. And
yes,
one of those is we have not dictated, none of the GMA members have dictated your permits that y'all approved. We
right.
are actually acknowledging the fact that you have those permits. So that's management decisions that Post Oak Savannah made. The other thing is that Post Oak Savannah, no different than Brazos Valley, because we use your curtailment plan as a template. Your board, Post Oak Savannah's board, adopted that curtailment plan. GMA 12 did not do that.
Correct.
You are free, Post Oak Savannah is free to revise that curtailment plan. Clearly, we are not dictating by what we're asking for the actual pumping in one file to be what is known pumping. We're not dictating anything. You have free control to manage your aquifers through your rules by your board. They have full latitude to do that. We acknowledge that. That is fully acknowledged, and I don't think that I'm wrong on what I'm saying here. Yes, we're asking in one run to put in the known pumping. So I'll leave it there. And we, believe me, Gary, Brazos Valley, our board, and I'm not going to speak for everyone else here. We think y'all do a great job of managing. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Y'all very thoughtful about what you do. And we're not trying, both Brazos Valley, we're not trying to meddle in your business. But when it comes down to the end of the day and someone challenges what we do, and I see it as if we say, yes, we're going to put in something that's less than actual, we've now become part of the problem, and Brazos Valley is not prepared to be a part of that. Now, I think somebody's going to say, well, they're just going to be challenged Post Oak Savannah, and we don't believe that. We believe that by putting things into that we've all agreed upon that are known pumping, we believe we've become part of that issue. So
Well,
I'll leave it there. And again, we greatly appreciate what y'all do, guys.
And I appreciate you recognizing that, but we've not all agreed. All we agreed to was S7 as a bookend, not a required continuation. So we've not all agreed in how that pumping file should be used. You know, we've had these DFCs, for lack of a better name for them, in place since before there were DFCs. And now we're going to be required to change our management because of what the GMA does. Because you said we can still manage and we can still curtail, but if our DFC is raised so much higher, then really, no, we won't be able to do any management. You can't curtail until you approach your desired future condition, because those DFCs have to be allowed. By law, you can't go past them, but you have to allow them. And so when that's the whole point of this challenge to this pumping file issue, is that once we determine that that's the file that's going to be used, then the number that comes back is this 170, whatever it is, feet of drawdown, 178, I guess. And so now another 100 wells have to be mitigated. So that's another socioeconomic impact to landowners. And you know, that's the balance we're trying to achieve, but we can't achieve it if you force us into that 18,000 acre foot pumping file and increase it. So we're asking for the GM to allow us to stay consistent with what we've done in the past. Go ahead, Alan.
So what I was going to say is, I keep hearing, and I've seen slides that y'all presented on the 18,000, 15,000, 12,000, and 9,000, and you hooked the wagon on each of those slides with how many wells would have to be mitigated, whether they were lowering the pumps or whether it was redrilling the well. I think that's right. So
yes, sir.
It appears to me, that the decision that's being made by Post Oak Savannah is clearly a monetary, because y'all have a mitigation plan. You've been collecting fees. And I think the mitigation plan is
not
a great thing.
Not a mitigation. Hang on, I do want to address that because this is important. When we adopted the well assistance program, You can call it mitigation if you like that. We chose not to because we didn't want it to be classified and thought of as a management tool. To us, that's not a management tool.
Okay.
It's an additional way to add monitoring wells for us, because you have to have some public good before you can expend public funds, and we all manage public funds. So that was the point. I'm sorry, I just wanted to be sure we understood what that well assistance program
Well, that's
is.
fine.
So go ahead, Alan. I apologize for interrupting you.
Oh, no. I understand that. So, the wells that are going to be affected by the Carrizo pumping in the Vista Ridge field are being re-drilled or the pumps being lowered at the cost of Post Oak Savannah, and then you have, I believe I saw that Vista Ridge then is paying part of that also. Is that right? Just so I've got it right?
We have an agreement with them that if their leases provide to the landowner that they're responsible for helping the landowner, that we'll use our staff to do the evaluation, and yes, they'll reimburse us for any expenses.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. So again, going back to those 4 different levels, it was based upon how many wells would be, I'm going to use the word mitigated, but I understand what,
Sure.
taken care of, whatever word you want to use.
Yes, sir.
And y'all chose and said 12,000 is a good number for us. There it is right there. You didn't choose 9, you didn't choose 15, didn't choose 18. You said that's where, because of the number of wells that were going to be impacted, and that's where y'all were comfortable with. It's not
So-
really a conservation decision. It's more of a monetary decision. I'll make that point. One
Well-
last thing is that, go ahead. I'm sorry. You
No,
address, go ahead.
I was going to say you're certainly welcome to evaluate what we've done and classify it however you'd like to. We looked at it as from several perspectives. One, monetary, yes. A second point was what's kind of consistent with what we've done in the past, and you can go back to a management plan way back there, which showed an availability of about 11,000 acre feet. So 12 was really close to that. I mean, we have a lot of consistencies that we built into those evaluations and that particular decision. And so it wasn't just about monetary, it was about trying to find balance. I mean, this whole thing, you guys understand the challenge that we face every day in our individual districts as well as this GMA about finding the balance that Steve Box talked about a while ago. And so to us, it makes sense when there is an issue that you're having to address, that you do that evaluation and you choose balance. And so we did. We said, you know what, let's make it to where half of these wells are not going to be impacted, and that's consistent with past availability numbers. And so Alan, it was more than just money. I mean, there's a true balance here of conservation and production. And that's what the preamble in the well assistance program actually states, that because of property rights, sometimes it's necessary, there's going to be impacts. We understand that. But our request is very simple. You guys are all within your 10% except for Lost Pines. And I don't know of any Lost Pines permits that would be affected by a lower number in the Carrizo DFC.
Well, Gary, since you're bringing up the variance, and we've got this table here that makes it very easy for all of us to see, and Alan's already spoken about his board's approved in advance what variances they're willing to accept. I guess my question is, why is that not a route that Post Oak Savannah can go down? At a 10% variance, taking the bottom end of that number puts you at 155, which is 10 feet above what you get from your PS13. And if you decided to go big, take a 15% variance, and that puts you at the bottom end at exactly the number you're looking for. I realize that's not how we've used variances in the past, but that's less of a substantial change in how we would be conducting our DFC planning than changing the pumping files like Alan mentioned.
Well, I guess I respectfully disagree with the last point you made there, Jim. I think that the pumping files are always up to debate and decision of each individual district. And so, but your first point is well taken, but we think that that percentage of variance is going to be something that the GMA votes on. And so all along, we've been supportive of the 10% that Alan, talked about Brazos Valley being okay with, but we would be well outside that 10% if we were at 145 instead of, if we adopted something at 145, that would be outside of that 10% that the GMA might be okay with. And now, if the GMA wants to go 15%, Alan's going to have to go back and get reapproval from his board, as I understand his presentation. I don't think our board would want to be that loose on it, but I know that they'd be okay with 10. And that's my whole point of this PS 13. Everybody's happy at PS 13. It
So,
works for everybody.
so what's the difference in impact between 145 and 155 for Post Oak Savannah?
So it's fairly linear. So just off the top of my head, I'm going to use a guesstimate. Okay.
That's fine.
If at 140-ish we're saving 100 wells, then between 140-ish and 170-ish, there's 100 wells to be fixed. Probably 25 to 30 wells difference in people not being affected over the next 50 years. About a third.
So I guess that brings us to an interesting question of, is getting 66% of what you want a good compromise? Because taking that 10% variance, which doesn't require anyone else to make changes to their existing board adopted plans, that gets you 66% of what you're looking for at 155 as an estimate.
And not being a strong mathematician, I appreciate your assistance there, but again, I'm back to the same point. S13 gives everybody what they need. Brazos Valley doesn't have to change. You guys don't have to change except for the Carrizo. And you don't have any permits that are affected in the Carrizo by that number that I'm aware of. So why do we have to lose and adjust when everybody else can say, you know what, that works for us? It's your pumping file, it's your management, it's your aquifers, it's your landowners.
Gary,
I don't understand why it's not easy. I'm sorry. I'm not getting there, but that's okay. Go ahead.
I'll say it's it's the point I've made at the last two meetings, point I made with my board and my DFC committees. It's what you're proposing represents a procedural change. It is a change in process from how we've handled the last two DFC cycles.
And I disagree respectfully there, Jim. And I asked that question a while ago. If this is the process we're going to follow, and some of y'all have indicated, hey, we got a new model. This is a one-time deal. We intend to hold these DFCs from now on, or at least for the next several decades. And that's kind of been the gist I've got. If I'm wrong there, somebody correct me, but that's kind of where we want to be. And that's a great plan. But let's say in Allen's district, somebody comes in and applies for 20,000 acre feet next year. It takes a year, they get it approved, they start production before the next cycle. Are you going to stick that in to the next round of DFCs? Because that's how it would work if they applied here and got a permit for it, and we were saddled with that precedent. And now our DFCs just continue to go up, and curtailment we won't need that section in the rules.
Well, I would make one point that
Sure.
From a realistic perspective, I highly doubt anybody's going to get a significant permit in any of our districts in under a year and be producing in under a year. I just don't. I mean,
We'll make it 3 years. They're still inside the 5.
I would point out that we have a permit that's been working its way through the system for over almost 4 now. So, and it's probably still a year out from actually getting resolved. So, at least from my perspective, I think any major permit is going to take a significant amount of time to work through our district. Maybe y'all are blessed with the less litigious districts, and that's fantastic if you are. But I take your point, and I understand, and I certainly agree that, for the past 2 cycles, I've been concerned about the constant, evolution of DFCs. And, at what point do we draw a line?
Sure. We
But
agree.
again, there are certain procedures that we have followed, which is, we include all of our known pumping, everything that's on the ground at the time that the DFC process is ongoing, and then we guess about what's going to happen in the future. And it's those estimates of what's going to happen in the future where we have room to maneuver to make changes to achieve DFCs that we're looking for.
But what time does that estimate of the future become reality and become a management for you? Because that's what's here. That's what's happened here. We went from the last round where it wasn't 18,000 acre feet in the Carrizo. It was a much smaller number. And just because a project did come to fruition and come online, now we have to change our management to account for it, when all along we've said, you can't do that every year. This is a maximum amount that's permitted, but it can't be pumped every year. And so now we're going to be forced to account for it and allow it every year because of that thinking. And I'm respectful of that line of thinking, Jim, but it doesn't fit with our management and our rules the way that they were adopted. It forces us into a different application of the rules.
So if I understood you correctly, you had not. I'm sorry. So if I understood you correctly, your previous pumping files during previous DFC cycles did not include the Vista Ridge permits?
Not in full, no. No, it was based on evaluations of impacts. And when you get down to the 9 factors that we're required to consider, that's really what DFCs are supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about what happens if this much water gets produced? Who does it affect? What happens if you don't allow it? Who does that affect? Those are socioeconomic. It's supposed to be about property rights. Have you been so restrictive that no one can recognize the value of their property? Or have you been so allowable to all production that sooner or later somebody runs out of that particular resource? And so that's what our rules have contemplated for a very long time. And we're being forced to change that now.
Can I
Sure, Dallin.
let me insert this, Gary?
Yeah.
Please. If, in our estimation, if we allow for a pumping file that is not, if we don't recognize all real permits and pumping, actual pumping, I think it puts everyone in GMA 12 in legal peril. That's what we believe. And GMA did not issue those permits. We didn't do that. Why should we be put in any type of legal peril because of permits that Post Oak Savannah issued and then said, we will curtail? And you and I have had long discussions about your curtailment plan and how it spreads it out across. They add acreage. If you end up going down, it just spreads the pumping. Why aren't we allowing that to happen? Y'all can manage that. You spread it out. You make them go. So I think we wouldn't have adopted a curtailment plan that looks like yours if we didn't think it made sense. And to us, it very much makes sense, and we can manage because of that. We adopted the plan. We manage our DFCs by our curtailment plan, and we will do that. And we are not set. We will start our management. It's our rules. Everybody knows 90% of the DFC. So we kind of disagree a little bit about you have to go to the DFC. We'll see because of the variance, because models are not perfect.
We agree.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. So anyway, I appreciate the debate. I really do. I really do. Some days I scratch my head and wonder, what am I missing? And some days I scratch my head and think, if I could just explain it differently, maybe it would make more sense. I don't think that we agree that anyone else is in legal peril in GMA 12. We fully understand that if a district issues a permit and they they do anything to address that permit, there's a strong opportunity for them to end up at court, and we're not looking for that either. But at the same time, we're trying to manage the way that we set up to manage a very long time ago. And so I'm again strongly requesting that you allow us to use this S13. We don't have, if Brazos Valley wants to increase their pumping and production, if that's their pumping file, they know their producers and their situation better than we do. But we know ours. I'd be glad to answer any more questions. And I do appreciate the questions. I really do. I think all this needs to be debated and discussed. We did not change our management to account for those impacts that they showed. And the point was, you're at risk. You pump it every year, you're gonna violate our management, and we're gonna have to regulate. And if you don't pump it every year, if you're at that 40%, it's gonna be great. And so in a way, they were put on notice. And so now here we've rolled forward 13 years. And so we want to continue to manage the way we were set up originally in our original evaluations. But there's been a lot of things that have happened.
So this reminds me of conversations I had with Joe Cooper back then, who Lost Pines was always saying, well, they never pump everything that's permitted. And by golly, we kept saying, well, yeah, but they may.
Well, they may. Absolutely.
And so yeah, you set up a scenario for dealing with that, and what you're really wrestling with is everybody else also, in the situation where you've permitted a great deal more than what the aquifer is capable, or under your evaluation of the aquifer, what it should be asked to deliver in the way of pumpage for development.
Because the trends have changed.
Because the trends have changed, yeah.
And if you go look at our rules, curtailment,
right along the lines of what we thought the trends might look like in the future. So here we are. So let's deal with it here. And I encourage you, actually, and I encourage the whole group, let's keep working on this, because this is so fundamental to what we're doing. How do we go forward from here feeling like we're all standing on solid ground when we can't come to an agreement on this particular aspect, and it's so fundamental and so basic? So let's go forward. And
yeah, so for your consideration, I would move that S12 that has been presented here today be the GAM run used for the development of the proposed DFCs for the Sparta, Queen City, Carrizo, Calvert Bluff, Simsboro, and Hooper aquifers.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
For the sake of having discussion on it, I'll second.
All right, so I have a motion and a second to use GAM run S12 to develop proposed desired future conditions for the Sparta, Queen City, Carrizo, Calvert Bluff, Simsboro, and Hooper aquifers. Is that accurate, Mr. Day?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
All right.
Gary, for the discussion, can we get the slide that compares the different runs back on the screen?
Sure. Doug, would you please go back to slide number 8? Oh, there it is. Okay. Yes, sir. There it is right there.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Glad to do it.
Yeah, and again, Gary, now having adopted the 10% variance for the Simsboro, 10% of 171 gets you back to 155-ish if you take the bottom end of that 10% variance.
Carrizo?
which on the Carrizo, yes, sir.
Yes,
So I
sir.
realize it's still 10 feet above what you're looking for,
Correct.
but it's a lot closer to the ballpark than what we've got right now in, say, S7.
Yes.
So,
Not as good as S13.
now, the sage poet McJagger once said, "You don't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need." So, you know,
Well, if Mick
just
was
for the sake of
around,
discussion.
if Mick was around, he'd tell me to go for 13. And looking at the the changes that we're talking about between those two, you can see them clearly laid out there. In S12, the Calvert Bluff for us changes about 6 feet. Excuse me. My math's not good, Jim. You may have to help me. Either that or my eyes are bad. Let's see. It goes about 10 feet. But when you look at the upside to everything else, I would strongly encourage you guys to consider S13. I know we're not voting on it, but I had asked a while ago if anyone would support it because it's more conservation minded. Is there any other discussion on the motion? All right, if you guys are okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Is that all right? Okay.
Yes.
Alan's a yes. David?
Yes.
Okay, got you, Alan. David Bailey?
Yes.
Jim Totten?
Yes.
And David Van Dresser?
If my mic would work. Yes.
Okay. And Post Oak Savannah, I will vote no. All right. Would anyone like to address the desired future conditions for the Brazos River alluvium at this time?
Yes, Gary, I would move that we use the GAM run presented at the last meeting for the Brazos River alluvium and the DFCs that will be developed from that going once sent to Texas Water Development.
Okay.
I think I stated that right.
Close enough. Do I have a second to that motion? Okay, Post Oak Savannah.
I'll second it.
Okay. David Van Dresser seconds. Thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay, same thing, roll call vote. Alan Day,
Yes.
David Bailey,
Yes.
Jim Totten,
Yes.
David Van Dresser.
Yes.
Post Oak Savannah will support as well. All right. Yeah, well, Jackson, we've actually adopted that, so it might be appropriate to ratify the previous action, and that way it'll put it back into the timeline with everything else. Is that acceptable? If so,
Yes. I move that we ratify our previous action concerning the Yawa Jackson DFCs and GAM run.
I'll second.
all right, I have a motion and a second to ratify the previous action taken by GMA 12 in adoption of the DFCs for the AWA Jackson aquifer. Alan Day,
Yes.
David Bailey,
Yes.
Jim Totten,
Yes.
David Van Dresser.
Yes. I think you
And-
called my name.
Yes, sir, I did. And Post Oak
Okay.
Savannah will